Who in the room would regard themselves as being a carer or a care partner? Okay, I'm flying solo. Fine. Oh, one. Oh, yeah, Michael. Of course. So how could I miss you? Well, Nick is very persuasive. When he rang me and said, would I do a talk? I said, yes, of course. I put the phone down and I thought, what on earth am I going to talk about? Because this is a very, very personal view of why I became an advocate. We've just seen two brilliant professional presentations. This isn't that. I don't even have any slides. I have one slide, but it's pretty pathetic anyway. But it's my personal journey to, step by step, stumbling on the way, becoming an advocate. And there are several key elements that I found on the way, which I hope people can understand and learn from. So if I go back to the beginning in 2004, it seems a long time ago, and yet, to me, it was only like yesterday. My wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's not good news. Surgery was required, and on the day of the surgery, we turned up at the hospital, and instead of going to the ward, which is what you'd expect, we were ushered into the surgeon's room. And you always know there's trouble when there's a nurse sitting there as well. And we thought, oh, what's going on here? So, please sit down. He said, I can't do the surgery today. He said, because your blood results have come back and they're wrong. Yeah, okay, well, what's wrong about them? He couldn't say. He was a surgeon, and surgeons by nature have to be pretty cold, cool people, don't they? He hadn't got a clue, but things had come up, which meant that he couldn't do the surgery. So he said, well, you go away, sit down, and we'll think about it, and I'll call some people and see what we can do. So he went into a waiting room. Now, at that point, there is a psychological effect that your brain just stops working. My son is a psychologist, and he knows all about this. And your brain just freezes. It says, okay, down come the shutters. I can't take any more information. So we walked out like zombies completely. And we didn't talk, because what else could you say? Anyway, he came back and said, good news, I can cut you up today. So surgery went ahead. Okay, right. So he'd written in the meantime. So the whole thing went through surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and that all went through. And then we had to deal with the next one. The surgeon had written to the GP, of course, the general practitioner, and he called us in and said, I've got to talk to you about your blood results because they don't look good. I'm going to send you to a consultant. She's a very good friend of mine, and she's good. Now, we didn't know anything about leukemia. At that time, we thought it was just leukemia. We'd never heard of CLL. So we went, and I'd then become, basically, overnight, not willingly, but a carer. I didn't know I was a carer, but that's what I'd become. And you find that there's no carer for the carer. It's something that you are thrown into, and there's no booklet that you can get. There's nothing at all to give you any information. And that's one of the things that I'm very keen to alter, because I'm quite a keen patient advocate now, and patient carer advocate as well. So we sorted the breast cancer, that's fine, and we were sent to a consultant. The first consultant, believe it or not, actually said, and I quote, don't worry, you're not going to die from it. She was wrong. We changed consultants. Now, one thing here is that she mentioned that you've got chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Now, where I come from in the Midlands, chronic means something else entirely. If your football team plays badly, they're chronic. If the centre forward misses a goal, he's chronic. So chronic meant, that's it. You know, I'm either going to die from breast cancer, or I'm going to die. There's no way out of this situation. So anyway, we changed consultants. And we did a lot of research, which you have to do. We rang everybody, we talked to everybody, and somebody mentioned to us the guru at the time, Terry Hamblin. Now, many here may know about Terry Hamblin. He was a super person. He actually was the guy that raised the profile of CLL, certainly in this country, and he was unstinting with his advice. And he actually rang us. We called him, and he called us back, and he said, okay, I'll talk you through it. He said, the first thing you need to do, he said, do you want to know the prognosis? Yeah, we were the sort of people that really needed to know what was going on, because we just didn't know anything at all. And he said, okay, send me some blood, and I'll do a test for you. About 2 weeks later, he rang back on a Sunday evening in his own time and said, okay, the news is not brilliant. You have just about the worst markers you could possibly have, 17p, TP53, unmutated. It took a time to absorb that. It really did. But then we were going back to see the second consultant. He was an oncologist, to be fair to him, again sent by our GP, and he said, oh, I've got all your test results here. They're impressive. I don't see this very often. He said, and I see that you're unmutated. That's good, isn't it? Well, no, it wasn't. No, it isn't. And we changed consultants. The third consultant was at least a hematologist. But unbeknown to us, he had no experience or very little experience in CLL. And it became clear, because we'd done an awful lot of research, and you have to do this, an awful lot of research. And we came to the conclusion after the second meeting with him, he'd done just the usual blood test and so on, that we probably knew more about CLL than he did. We were teaching him. Now, there comes a time when you think, no, this simply cannot go on. So we changed consultants. And again, we contacted Terry. He said, okay, he said, I had a registrar here down in Southampton. He's not far away from you in the Midlands. Go and see him. Okay, it's an hour and a half away, but when you've gone through that sort of experience, hey, you didn't, hour and a half, doesn't matter, does it? Eventually, it was a great decision, because another story is that making that decision actually saved my wife's life on one occasion, because of the way he reacted. So we're now learning a lot. And the moral at that point is never give up, keep trying, don't be fobbed off. It's difficult to change consultants in this country, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible at all. So we had a long period of watch and wait, which with those markers is pretty unusual. And it went on for a while. But then treatment became necessary. And with those markers, it was clear that FCR wasn't really going to do anything at all. At that point, ibrutinib was idelalisib was coming onto the market. It was in a trial, sort of, but it was so difficult to access that nobody really understood it at all. And so, being proactive, we rang Gilead. And we eventually got through to one of the directors and said, look, what's going on here? He said, well, it's interesting you should call, because we were thinking about having a compassionate access scheme. Oh, that sounds pretty good. He said, would you like to be one of the first patients? Since there was hardly any alternative, we said, yeah, fine, good. And we started, it's we, because I'm a carer, and it's both of us. We started Idela. The results were remarkable for 2.5 to 3 months. They were so good that Gilead actually sent a video team down to video, and it was on the local news. The new wonder drug, cures cancer, brilliant. It didn't last, of course. It didn't last, unfortunately. One of the problems with actually getting the drug in the first place, the drug company was fine, the consultant was fine, the pharmacist was very, very dubious. The pharmacists, in my experience, are quite difficult. They go by the rules. And it was quite difficult to persuade him to issue the drug in the quantities needed. Anyway, that's a separate issue. But the side effects that we now know about kicked in, and pneumonitis was a reason to stop the drug. So we'd gone up in expectations, and then the drug was stopped. Stopping is never a piece of good news, but because Idela had failed, we were really looking for something else. And at that time, ibrutinib was available on a trial. The trial had actually closed, but I'm not sure how or why, but we managed to get on the trial. We squeezed our way in. And again, the results were brilliant for 3 or 4 months. They didn't send a video team down, unfortunately, but they were very, very good. But then various things happened, one of which was transformation. And we know a bit more about transformation. We've heard about that this morning. And she developed Richter's, which is bad news. At the hospital we were at, the normal treatment for Richter's was R-CHOP. But she was judged to be not suitable for that for a whole range of reasons. So again, we had a look around. We chased everywhere. And somebody said, look at Oxford. Anna Hsu is doing a trial-ish on a new drug. It's now called acalabrutinib, and it may be available for Richter's. She was known to have Richter's, so we had to go through all the hoops because not all patients can be access to a trial at all. So we went on the trial, and again, the results were quite remarkable for 2 and 3 months. The first time we went in, she was in a wheelchair. Second time, she walked in a month later and then had to have a wheelchair out. 3 months later, she walked in fine and everything was going great. But the Richter's took over and the journey basically ended at that point. So having gone through that sort of experience, I think you really have to try as much as you can to learn from it. And so I'd like to share with you just basically what I've learned. And that is, you need to be an empowered patient to get the healthcare that you want and deserve. And you can't do that without accurate information. And I've also learned that as a patient advocate, I can make a difference. And you're making a difference as well. I speak to patients at our conferences all the time. And we hold these right around the UK. And I talk to them about the absolute need for them to take control and gain knowledge for themselves. If I can do it on their behalf, I will do that and help them. And I've seen people transformed by being given the correct information. I've seen them go to a consultant who knows what he's doing with CLL, and he's said, I'm sorry, but you've been advised to have the wrong treatment. And it's revolutionized, it's changed their lives. And this is what I think we can achieve as patient advocates. And I want to carry on with that as long as I can. So, thank you very much.